So we are likely going to get interrupted in a matter of seconds, so let's talk some books. What do I have to say this week? Do I even have anything to say this week? I actually had to stop and look up and see what I've actually been reading. We are now 2 weeks into August. I haven't done a weekly reading wrap up yet, and typically at this point, I would have a lot of books to talk to you about, and I don't. I almost needed both of those weeks just to have something to say. Am I in a reading slump or am I just not reading? That is the question. That's probably going to be the title of the thumbnail. And I honestly don't know the answer to that question yet. So I'm just going to babble on about these books. I do have some notes that you can see here. And hopefully by the time we're done, I'll have an answer to the question. So the first book I'm going to talk about is A Novel Bookstore by Laurence Cosse. I almost got that last name right, but I know that was wrong. Anyway, this is a book in translation. The author is French. I would say this is a thoughtful story that is following the characters Francesca and Ivan, two people who meet over books as they try to navigate the brutal world of literary criticism while trying to open the ideal bookshop. Now, the inside French flap of this book describes it more as a mystery novel where people start getting killed or knocked off or threatened for expressing their literary opinion. And I feel like if you go with that description of the book, you're going to feel as misled as I did. So I would stick to what I said, and you may be slightly less disappointed. That said, I enjoyed this book. In fact, you can see from some of the pink tabs at the beginning of this book, I hit a moment where I was just loving every single moment. I think the book opened a little slowly and then a little oddly, because there was mention of a zombie at one point where I was like, what is actually going on here? Um, but then it kind of settled down into its own rhyme and reason, and I started to get where this was going, and I was so fascinated and drawn in. So let me talk about some of the highs in reading this book. I would say that one of the main themes this book talks about is what is a good book, where can you find it, and who gets to decide what makes a book good and like worthy of reading and recommending to others. And this novel dives really deep into the publishing industry and why books are published, why certain books are pushed, and particularly why you might find some books in bookstores and not others, and what books, do people really want to find when they go to a bookstore to look for it. So if you love books and books about bookstores and you love bookstores and all those things, this book may be for you. However, I would say it leans heavily on the side of what most people would consider literary fiction and classics in terms of the books that are promoted in here. If you like name dropping of authors and other books to read in your own book, this is definitely the book for you. One of the other things that I really enjoyed in reading this book was that I felt very conflicted throughout it. And I think that is intentional by the author, that she's really is trying to get you to think and decide what makes a good book. Are you going to go with the opinion that is largely expressed in this book? Or are you going to kind of go with the, I don't know, mob mentality? Because there's definitely a conflict in here between the sort of good book people and the entertaining book people. So it definitely invites you as a reader to enter in the discussion and decide what camp you're in, if any. And I was definitely finding myself pulled by both sides. In one moment, I would be like, oh no, this is clearly right. And then in the next, I would go, well, I don't know. Are you being pretentious? Is this snobbery? Is there a point here, or are they all good? However, this book was not all good. I definitely had some lows, and I think one of them partially had to do, oddly enough, with the publishing marketing of this book. I definitely was expecting this to be a sort of semi-murder mystery. For some reason, I definitely got the impression that people in this book were going to be like dying left and right and attempts on people's lives and that kind of thing, and don't think that. Like that's not a spoiler. That's just poor marketing if you think that's what this book is about. And I may have myself led you to think that that's what this book is about. But read the French flap and tell me what you think it's telling you this book is about. Anyway, I was disappointed that there is less of a mystery in this. I don't even feel like this was at like cozy mystery level. I don't even think I would say that this book as a subgenre was a mystery novel. Like, certainly not a detective or thriller novel. Like, there were mysterious things happening in the book and throughout it as part of the plot, but I would describe it more as a book with mysterious events happening more than a mystery novel as we think of it today. And this is a recently published novel, so I think that's a pretty fair critique to make. I also found myself not liking it because I was very distracted by what I felt like were some of the subplots in here. There is sort of a love story going on. I guess there's almost a love triangle in here, but I wasn't feeling it because I just didn't understand one of the characters involved. And because I didn't understand that character, it was making less sense to me why another character was feeling very moved towards them and almost in love with them. It felt irrational, I guess, is the problem, was the love in here felt irrational and not grounded on a lot, and the more obvious love situation or potential in here seemed to flounder unreasonably. So it just left me kind of confused. There was one point where I kind of hated one of the love interest characters, and not in a satisfying, like, I hate you side character Thomas Hardy kind of way. Just like, I really don't like you. Like, I don't see what he sees in you. And that's despite the fact that we were getting it. Well, I won't even talk about what perspective we were getting from, because that was also super confusing. To say I was disappointed is, I feel like, an understatement, because about a third of the way into this book, I thought for sure this was going to be a 5-star read for me. And by the end, it really just ended up being about 3 stars. And at the end of the day, I would recommend this book to somebody who likes to read literary fiction, because it does read more as literary fiction than any other genre to me. And I would say that in addition to that, you need to like discussions of books, especially as it relates to the publishing industry and marketing. It doesn't go heavy into marketing, but just the general idea of how are books marketed to people, particularly in bookstores, and who gets to decide what belongs in a bookstore and what makes a good novel. So if any of those things interest you, I suggest picking this book up, but maybe try getting it from your library. Next up, I also DNF'd and Ladies of the Club, and I'm just realizing that I'm kind of doing this backwards for me. I usually start with whatever books I DNF'd, but I guess I'm going in the order of how the reading has gone over the last couple of weeks. I finished a novel Bookstore, kind of landed in a decided I was going to plow through in Ladies of the Club and finish it, and I got all the way up to like 940 out of 1,430 pages, and I called it quits. And why? Well, let me start with what this story is about, because I don't think, summarized it in quite a while, and sorry, let me hold it here as you'll be less likely to get blinded by the foil. So, in Ladies of the Club is a historical fiction that tells the story of a group of women who all live in small town Victorian America. It's set in the late 1800s, and it follows them more or less so over the course of their lives, from graduating from basically a ladies' finishing school all the way through, I don't know, death, maybe? That's what it feels like it's going for. But since I didn't finish the last 500 pages this time, because it is a reread, I guess I won't know, because I definitely don't recall how it ended. This book covers their lives. It's definitely a slice of life type of situation. I've heard this book compared to Middlemarch in terms of you're just getting into the nitty gritty, like everyday little lives of, people in a town. In that very general and broad sense, I would agree. However, even I would acknowledge that George Eliot is a significantly better writer. She builds way more tension and interest into her story, and this book was just a fail for me. I'm gonna put this book down. So, what were the highs? I don't know. Were there any? It wasn't bad. I guess that was the high. It just kind of kept on being okay. And at the end of the day, I think I kept reading because I really wanted to finish it so I could give a more full and thorough review. But I read 900 pages. In my opinion, that's enough. Like, I'm done. I I I would recommend this book to some people, I guess. I believe I gave it a 2 at the end of the day because I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. It wasn't okay. I didn't like it in the end. It was just, at best, it was kind of boring and plotting and slow paced and not a great way. And at worst, I was repulsed by the characters in the book. There were a lot of characters who were racist, xenophobic, sadistic at times, it seemed like, chauvinistic. They were just all the things. Like, she would bring a character to the point where maybe you liked them, and then they would do something that would make you just completely repulsed by them as a character. And after that happens, one by one, to every single character in the book, you're like, I don't like any of you guys. Why am I spending this much time with you? So that was in Ladies of the Club. Like I said, I could see some people, I don't know if liking, but reading the book. For instance, if you like historical fiction and you want to know more about life in late 1800s in small town USA, this would be a very bad example of that. This is not like complex characters. This is like, no, you kind of suck as a person. Like, this is a core value of yours, not like something you're struggling with on the inside and you have good parts and bad. Like, they're not Batman, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. They're not Batman. There are no heroes. There's no one you like. They're not the unlikely whatever it is called hero, where it's like they don't want to be the hero but they're the hero and they're kind of a complex character. No, there's other books you could read if you like that trope and that characterization. This is not it. You might want to skip this book. That would be my ultimate recommendation, which I'm somewhat surprised by because a lot of people like this book. In fact, on both Goodreads and the Storygraph, this book is very highly rated by a lot of people. It's not like 4 people went on there and said they loved it. But, read the reviews. Read the 5-star reviews, read the 1-star reviews, and everything in between. I think a lot of people who like it are able to just ignore all the horrible things that every character does for the 900, well, really 1,400 pages that the book goes on. And aren't bothered by it. I don't know how, but, to each their own. So considering all these things together, maybe I am in a reading slump because those are 2 pretty bad starts to the month. And especially since I read those books back to back, I binge read 200 pages of this before I finally decided I'm done. And then I guess in all fairness, I have been reading other things, but I've been bouncing from book to book to book to book to book on my TBR list, trying to decide what to read next to no avail. That's not totally true. I did finally settle on a book, thank goodness, because I was starting to run out of hope, and that book is Oblomov, and I am loving this book, guys. So what is this book about? This book is about the protagonist, whose name is Oblomov, and he is a mid-30 something-year-old guy who is just sort of living off the money from his, he's orphaned. He's living off the money that his parents left him in the estate. He is part of the quickly fading remains of the aristocracy in Russia. This book is set in, I don't know. I don't know what year this book was set in. I don't know what time period that would be. I'm guessing the 1800s in Russia. But anyway, he is just very apathetic about life and everything in it. He would just love to just lay on his couch all day long. It's difficult to get off the couch because what is life and is it worth living? And not in a depressed manner, but just like I'm enjoying sitting here just thinking. In fact, most of his actions are just thinking. But this is such a great characterization. In fact, the first couple of chapters are just all about the characters. I have heard that this book is very similar to the type of writing and style of writing and characterization and character work that Dostoevsky would do, which doesn't surprise me because they actually lived at the same time and they were writing contemporaries. And I'm riddled with guilt every time I lie down on my couch to just think. There's a couple of things in this book that have surprised me. I never thought a book would make me feel so guilty about sitting down or lying down. And I've never wanted so badly for someone to not get up off the couch in a book. Like, the level of satisfaction that I would have if this author somehow manages to get him to sit on the couch or in a chair for the entire book and not actually get up until maybe the end, but maybe not even then. I don't know. I so badly want that to happen, and I want it to be well done. And if it is, it's gonna be a 5-star. But I feel like that's a lot to ask, because generally I am like not a fan of people in a locked room thinking, but maybe it's working because he's not just thinking, like he's having conversations because there's a lot going on around him. I am really enjoying that book. I'm not going to let you know ever if he gets off the couch. You'll just have to read it for yourself. So I'm excited about that book, but ever since picking it up, the days have been super busy, so I haven't been able to read it as much as I want. But I'm gonna wrap up this video because my son wants to go to the bookstore and it's his last day here before we take him to college. And then we're going out to dinner because it's his last day here before we take him to college. And at some point today, I wanna read. So that's it for now. Let me know how your August is going. Hopefully your reading's going way better than mine has been. And I'll talk to you next time. Oh, and before I forget, there's a couple of different reading things going on. What are they? Oh, I've got another Barnacle Buddy read going. So that is for the year of your birth. I have an announcement video on that, and I'll put it in the cards and down in the description and maybe in the in-screen video things as well. And yeah, you can watch that announcement video and go see what that's about. And then I'm also going to be reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn this month, in the month of August, and there will be a link to my Discord in the description box below if you would like to join us in discussing that book, as we then go to read James by Percival Everett in the month of September, and maybe I'll even host some sort of live discussion on that. To be determined, who knows, we'll see. But that's it for now, and I will talk to you next time.